Hello and welcome to Ildefonso Inc. Today we have an amazing guest, Mack Williams of Archer, Giant Horse, the amazing sketch with Timothée Chalamet on SNL, and Pig Apple. He is a producer and an animation director based in New York City who specializes in VFX and motion graphics. And Mack's credits include shows like the animated series Archer and Saturday Night Live, the cult classic Sealab 2021, Luhrmann's The Get Down, and The Problem with John Stewart. He's also a partner and executive producer and animation director at Pig Apple, an NYC-based production company, alongside Ed Mundy and Trevor Williams. And Pig Apple specializes in live action production, visual effects, and animation. Their work ranges from advertising and branded content to wholly original content like short films with a special focus on comedy. This conversation was super fun. Mack's on the East Coast, I'm on the West Coast, so we were able to connect before a really big day for Mack tomorrow, because at the time of recording, Mack has a normal Friday evening like us, but tomorrow he wakes up and goes to 30 Rock to do an episode of SNL with Ryan Gosling. So he said to keep an eye out for some cool digital shorts that he will be working on for that. I'm a huge Archer fan, so it was really fun to talk with someone who worked on Archer and who was there in the early days and conceiving the show, being around, that early team. He talks about how they used Adobe After Effects for a lot of the show, and so we got to talk a lot about that, and we nerded out about some barbecue spots in LA and New York, and it was a great episode. I'm gonna try and fix it in post, but there are a couple camera flickers, so if you are really sensitive to flickers, just be aware, but hopefully I'll have that all ironed out. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe. If you're new here and you don't know what Ildefonso Inc. is, we are a music agency, and we do sync, so think TV and film and music and all that. But also we just like telling stories through music. So we have another series called Mothership Gear, where we ask our friends to bring over weird or unique pieces of gear, and we've produced other shows like Lip Roll and stuff like that. So go ahead and subscribe, and if you're a fan of Archer or SNL, leave a comment below, and we will hopefully see you guys around after the show. So talk to you later, so enjoy the show. Hey Mack, how's it going? Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me. We've had a little bit of a pre-convo to meet each other, and going through your resume has been really fun because it's, I don't know, there's just something about, you kind of drop like several reels showing the different roles you play in the industry.
Yeah.
And that hooked me in, but obviously the art and the animation, like I'm a huge art and animation fan. So seeing that there's like a through line, but there's also a diversity to your work, I think I've kind of been able to figure out the DNA to some degree where that's happening, because you're a business owner with Pig Apple. So
Right.
that could be like advertising, right? Kind of clean, a little bit more corporate, but then you also have a history with the teams that make stuff like Archer, or even your Colbert work. John Stewart, it's a little edgier. So you're kind of in these two different pools, but at the same time, on your guys' website, Pig Apple, I believe you guys say that you like to specialize in comedy. So tell me about Pig Apple first, and then we'll kind of work our way through.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Spencer. Happy to be here and talk about the DNA of my career. I think you did a really good job of kind of summarizing it. Yeah. Pig Apple is the company that I co-founded with my buddies Trevor Williams and Ed Mundy. We're all friends from college. We all worked together on a sketch comedy show in college at the University of Georgia. And Pig Apple basically is our sort of combining our forces it started out to help each other with different projects, because, we were basically getting freelance work, and then we were hiring each other to work on these things together. And they're like, let's just make a business together. We're always working together. We know we like each other. And so that's been going for, I forget the exact year we founded it, because it's all kind of a blur. It's kind of blurry because we were working together so much before it was official. But I think like 11 or 12 years or so. And, but you're right. We try to specialize in comedy. That's where I think our strength is. But that doesn't mean that all of our work is comedy. We've done a lot of, on the motion graphics side, which I do a little bit of that with like, different clients in the healthcare and finance industry. I work with other agencies. Like we'll partner with other agencies to help produce videos for them, and so sometimes that can be real corporate stuff. But it's also like, I think that a lot of our original stuff that we do and the stuff that we try to like target in terms of clients is comedy, because that's sort of that's our background.
Yeah. So with Pig Apple, how much time would you say that you're putting into the like client acquisition? Are you mainly creative? How do you switch those hats?
Yeah.
And yeah, and then also
not enough is the answer. Not enough time. Because honestly, that's something I wish that we had more time for, to be a little bit more dedicated to that. But it's sort of a delicate balance between doing the work and doing the business. And right now we sort of all split our time really doing that sort of stuff. When I get an inquiry, I'm the person, if it's for an animation project, Trevor usually handles live action stuff, and Ed handles VFX stuff mostly. And so I'm usually on the animation side. So if let's say I got an inquiry, I'm going to put together the budget and schedule and proposal and bid and send that all off. But I have to balance all that work with also doing whatever I'm doing for a different client already that week. And so it can be tough. And I'll be honest, I wish we'd had more time to do like client acquisition. I wish I'd had a better idea of how to do that and was better at it, because certainly that would be a big help. But it is a real. We've been very, very fortunate just through our other work that we've done, through word of mouth and things like that, and just our previous work tends to lead lots of people to us. I would say the biggest client acquisition thing that I ever did, honestly, was to do this web series that I directed for Pitchfork, the music website. I've gotten more work from those videos and made more money off of the work, that came directly from people seeing those videos than virtually anything else I've ever done in my career. And I would say including Archer in that regard, just the number of inquiries that we got and the number of reactions. So that was a real big part of it. But again, that's sort of like passive client acquisition. That's not really like actively seeking out people.
Yeah, so that's an interesting kind of case study. So for you, have you tried to, unpack that? Like, what does that mean that the Pitchfork piece does more than the legacy of like a TV show? Like, is it because of the role that you were in as a director, or is it because of Pig Apple's relationship to the project, or is it that was some kind of niche that other companies were looking to kind of fill?
It's hard to say, but I think it's like when people see a TV show, that there's like dozens and dozens of people that are involved in the production of a TV show. And for these web videos that we did for Pitchfork, there were lots of, I heard lots of artists. We had a lot of amazing artists a lot of those were people from Archer, because that was the people that I knew at that time. And so the staff on those shorts actually was largely Archer artists and animators and things like that. So maybe I'm not giving Archer enough credit, honestly. But I think when people see a TV show, your name is just sort of a name in the credits. And when they see something, you're like, this company produced this, and we are, I'm the director for that company, the producer for that company. I think it's a little bit more like, oh, they did this themselves. And in a TV show, I feel like you have a network. There's so many stakeholders. There's so many people involved in the production of a TV show. And, I was love my time on Archer, but I was just a small part of a huge production as far as that goes. So I think that that's the big difference. It's like when you're working on something that's of that scale, it's truly a collaborative effort. And not that the Pitchfork stuff wasn't collaborative, it certainly was, but it's many fewer people were directly involved.
Yeah, and the other through line, I saw a couple looking at your reels that were like magnets for me. One obviously is the music component. It feels like there's some musical DNA kind of running through your work, right? Like Pitchfork and then the Get Down. Would you say that music is an inspiration for you, or does music go hand in hand with animation, or what's your relationship to music?
That's a great question. The Get Down, when I did the Get Down, that was a direct result of that Pitchfork show. That was directly because Boz Lurman saw an episode of that Pitchfork series that was covering the same material, the same topics and history as the birth of hip hop that his show was. And so that was a direct through line from Pitchfork to that show, the gig on the Get Down. I love music. I'm not a musician. I was in a band for a while when I lived in Atlanta, but I called myself the charismatic frontman. I was the singer of the band, and basically I did everything in the band except make music. Like I designed the t-shirts, booked the gigs, designed the website, managed the social media, I did, and I wrote the lyrics, but I didn't write a note of music. And the people in my band, I think, really appreciated that because they didn't want to book the gigs, they didn't want to design the t-shirts or make a website and do all this other stuff that you need to do. And so that was my role. I love music. Music's a huge part of my life. I go to shows all the time. That being said, one of the things I've never done in my career, and I'm very intimidated to do, if to be honest, that's probably why I haven't done it, because I've had opportunities, is animate a full music video, like animated music video, because oftentimes, at least lately, the budgets are pretty not great because of the state of the music industry, and also just the state of music videos are not what they used to be when I was a kid. I don't want to speak for you, but when I was a kid, music videos were like a huge deal. And I've had a few opportunities to like do some music video stuff, and I just was like, I don't think it would really hurt my heart to do a music video and not be proud of it and not be really good. And if there were like funding and like being able to hire the right artist and being able to bring in the people that I knew would make it amazing, wasn't there, then I just couldn't. I didn't want to take it on because I was worried about. I wanted to be really proud of the final result, and so I think it's sort of become this sort of mental block. Honestly, I will say no one's asked me to do a music video in a few years, but for a while there, because of the Pitchfork Association, I got asked a lot, and I never did it.
Yeah, totally. I could totally relate to that feeling of wanting the business side to coincide with the creative side, because you want to feel like there's an investment and a buy-in from all the parties. And when there is, I feel like there's more of that security blanket of like being able to explore the ideas that you want to explore and like fully tap into that. And like you said, the music industry is in not the best state right now. And it's a bummer because you could see a world where music videos should be more relevant than ever right now, but the industry is so spread out. And I think that's why I'm so grateful for TV series and projects where we do get to see that kind of large scale creative force. So let's kind of move into SNL. When did you start working on SNL? Because that is a large team.
Yes.
Is it as big as a team like Archer, or where does it? How does it compare?
So much bigger. So like just the film unit alone, I think our three. We have three separate film unit teams, and I mean I don't even know the answer of how many people are on just that. It is. I mean, it's way bigger. I mean, maybe not ultimately like if you combine like everyone who ever worked on Archer, but like it is way more people than Archer that are involved in SNL for sure. That's a big difference.
Yeah, so your team is the film unit, and you guys are in 30 Rock.
You asked me when I didn't answer your question. You asked me when I started. I started this is the 49th season. I started midway through season 47 was when I was brought on.
Okay, yeah, and what's weird is like, for me, I've been looking at the videos, that you were a part of, and like seeing a year ago or 2 years ago, it all starts to blend together for me. Like, and I'm like, okay, so 2022, what was that like? Like, were we still locked down in LA, or were we not? Like, what was that environment like for you when they asked you to come into 30 Rock?
So whenever it started, it definitely was still like high COVID, because we would have to go into, I guess this would have been 21. We would go in and get COVID tested. So I guess I started in like earlier in the, I'm maybe getting my dates confused, because it also does blur that the past 5 years blur together for me.
Right. It's just a chunk.
Yeah. So we would have to go into 30 Rock because at that time, the remote sort of interface, the remote work, they'd been doing everything remote during the real serious COVID lockdown. And now they were back in the office, and you had to go in and get a COVID test. I forget, it was like a day before or 2 days before Saturday. So I'd have to go into town, go to 30 Rock. I live in Queens, so I have to go into Midtown, go to 30 Rock, get a COVID test. If you pass the COVID test, then you could come back on Saturday where you got another COVID test, a rapid test. Like the one on Thursday was like the real deal, like I forget, the PCR or whatever it was. Yeah. And then you had to do another test Saturday morning. We all sat together in a waiting room and sometimes people would get sent home Saturday because it had not like developed yet. So it was pretty intense, especially that first season and a half or so before they kind of pulled back on all the testing and stuff. But I was there the week that they sort of had the Christmas episode where they sort of had to like do a half of an episode and show a lot of like classic sketches and stuff, because half the cast and like a bunch of people got COVID. I forget exactly how many it was, but there was like, everybody came in on Saturday and like 15 people or something had COVID. I forget. It was in the news. It was like a big deal, but it was a really big deal for me because I was getting married on New Year's Eve, and this was less than 2 weeks before my wedding. And so this is also the height of when Omicron descended. And so they came out, they're like, they're not, the show's getting not canceled, but we're doing a different version of the show. There's a bunch of people that have COVID, and we're on a completely, we're not anywhere near the cast. Like, we're on a completely different floor. But I was like, people come and go, and there's people walking around and stuff, and I was just like, I gotta go home. Like, I'll work remote. Like, at that point we could log in and do remote. So I can't be here. I gotta go because I got a pretty big investment that I can't miss in the next 2 weeks. So that was like really scary, honestly, because me and my now wife had been like basically locked ourselves down for all of December so that we didn't get COVID before our wedding. And then, and things were like looking up, things were looking really great. And then Omicron came, and that's a whole other story that's not relevant to the podcast. But man, we got married on New Year's Eve during the very peak tippy top of Omicron infections. So that's sort of related to my COVID SNL experience, is very directly tied to that in my memory. Yeah. So now I never got COVID until I got it at my wedding. I didn't get it at SNL. I got it at my wedding. That's wild.
So now are you commuting still? And then what's that look like? Because I always think about like being a creative and then being in the business side too. Like, how much bandwidth do you have? I can't imagine having a weekly live show that's a part of the week, but isn't fully the week for you, right? Because it's kind of is it part-time or freelance? Like, what is it considered?
Yeah. So I don't know what you would officially consider it. I consider it like I am full time on the team, but it's we typically only work. I'm a VFX artist for the film unit, meaning that I only work typically 99% of the time on the pre-taped sketches that you see. So things that aren't presented live in front of the studio audience. And so I typically only work on Saturdays. We come in at the beginning of the day. We have someone's been up all night editing all the footage and putting everything together, and then we start doing the visual effects that are needed, whether it be graphics, tracking, roto, green screen key, like any phone replacement, screen replacement, you name it. They've asked us to do it in just the limited amount of time that I've been there, and they've been doing it for years and years. And so yeah, it's really, really, it's quite fun to, as someone with an animation background, you know, working on like an episode of Archer. You know, we work on an episode for, you know, a few months from script to delivery, and Archer was like, you know, much faster than even some other animated shows that get sent overseas or whatever, take much longer for a full turnaround. But to go in, start working on something at the beginning of the day, at the end of the day, you're done with it. It's really fun, and it can be really exciting too, to do it.
So then what kind of timeline and advantages do you guys have as the film unit? Like, when you say Saturday, does that mean that you guys are working on the following week's Saturday episode? Or you guys are finalizing the broadcast, but still, even though this is pre-tape, you are still under the same deadline as everyone else. And do you guys, like that editor, do they get anything more than 7 days to work on that edit? Like how much? Like
no, they don't even get 7 days. Like they fit. Like this stuff gets written the week of. It gets, you know, approved or whatever the script. Like the week of. Like usually, if they actually film things, they usually film those things on Thursday and Friday.
Wow.
And then it's on TV on Saturday. And it's a huge team of people. Some of the most talented editors in the business work on this on the film unit. Some amazing directors who put all this together. Like I work with, it's really quite inspiring to be there. I work with some of the most talented people I've ever met in my life on a weekly basis. It's really, really exciting and fun to be there.
So then walk me through what the schedule for something like Giant Horse looks like. Is that a Thursday shoot? That's 2 days, and then because that's a lot of VFX.
Yeah, I don't really I don't recall the like details of that specifically, but I will tell you that like for some, you know, it depends on the project, but sometimes we do work on things earlier in the schedule. So it might be like Thursday, Friday. Like if it's going to be a really animation heavy sketch, or it's going to be like if there is stuff that we can get a head start on, that we can start working on in advance, anything that's like 3D animation typically gets started a day or two early. But so like a lot of the Giant Horse or Tiny Horse is like claymation. So all that stuff was done sort of in the days or before the actual filming of the actors. I don't remember. I was not involved in the claymation stuff, so I don't know the exact schedule. But like there are definitely sketches where many people are working on things way in advance. But it's very rare that it's more than like 3 days in advance or 4 days in advance. Sometimes if it's something that they've been planning for a while, or they know, oh, we got a certain host in a couple weeks, we want to do this big sketch we had an idea for. I mean, occasionally things are being worked on at a further out pace, and I'm speaking strictly about like post, like VFX and editing and stuff. I mean the writing and things like that I can't really speak on. I don't know. I'm not involved in that. But yeah, it can be. But then, you know, if whatever those elements are, we're doing a few days in advance. It's only like a day or 2 days in advance. And then the real work happens on Saturday, because that's when the editor and the director and the writers are all working together to like pick the takes, pick the shots, get the edit together. You know, sometimes we'll come in on Saturday morning and the edit is, you know, it's there and it looks great, because these guys, I don't even know how they do it. Honestly, they stay up so late, so many nights in a row. And just doing it the one night is tough for me. But yeah, it's like they'll be, you know, and takes change and shots change and things like that throughout the day. You just have to react. And also there's a lot of people who chime in on things throughout the day. And so you do rehearsals, and you do, you know, the sketch gets shown at dress rehearsal before it airs on TV. And so sometimes we're making lots of heavy changes in that time between dress rehearsal and air. And sometimes even the stuff that airs on East Coast is not 100% complete. you may see like a shot that like it'll be done, like you won't see like a green screen, but then the thing that airs on the West Coast, or like on more specifically what goes onto YouTube, will be like the polished, finished thing, and then that will, if there's like repeats or whatever, that gets put in. But like if you're watching it live on the East Coast, sometimes you'll see shots that are like, we just couldn't get them in. We just couldn't get it done. And it might be, you know, I would say when you see something like that, most of the time it's like 85% done. Like you're never going to see something that's just like an actor in front of a green screen because we didn't touch it at all. Like that's not going to make it. But it's it can be pretty. It's like I said, it's exciting. It's like sometimes you're there and everything goes really well, and there's not a lot of notes or changes. And after dress, you're just sort of hanging out and chilling and enjoying being there, a part of it. And then other times we're working even past when the show has aired because we're trying to get that stuff fixed. For I don't even know if that stuff gets applied to West Coast. I kind of assume that, but I don't actually know. But definitely for like, we call them web fixes. Like we're fixing stuff so it looks better once it gets posted on YouTube for posterity. Like that's where so many people are going to see it also anyway. So we want that one to look the best for sure.
Yeah, that's incredible. So I watched several of the sketches that you've been a part of in post. So Meatballs, what was your memory of Meatballs?
Meatballs is actually probably one of the most fun days, but also one of the hardest and longest days. It's kind of weird, like those days where, like a Meatballs day or like a Giant Horse. I didn't work on the original Tiny Horse. I did work on Giant Horse, the sequel. Those days where it's like, it's a lot of work and we're really, really pushing things right up to the last minute. So those are some of the most fun days. Cause sometimes it's like, there's not that many VFX shots. There's not any animation. It's just like, we're just doing like phone or screen replacements or doing, green screen keying or things like that, where it's like a little less, I don't want to say sexy, but like a little less exciting stuff, more just like invisible effects. And then we're like done and everything goes smoothly. Sometimes those days are sort of boring. And then we have the days where we're like nonstop working and it's super exciting. And so Meatballs, I remember, was a day like that. And it was also probably the first time that I got to really contribute to a sketch like that, where it was one of those days where it was like, holy cow, this is going to be a tremendous amount of work. You know, as soon as you come in, because I think, if I remember correct, I typically have read the scripts before I go in, but I usually have not seen anything before I go in on Saturday. And I just remember being like, oh my God, this is going to be so much work. And it was, but the end result, I think, was so good. Everyone really, really knocked that out of the park. And that's and included in that is even like the people who do the practical effects. They're a huge part of the film unit. You know, and we get to sort of work in synchrony with them in a lot of ways, where they're doing practical puppets or effects, or, you know, the gross little meatballs glued all over the actors, and then we're compositing a face onto it and little arms and legs onto it. But it's like there's an actual practical meatball that's like glued to Sarah Sherman's neck or whatever. And so, you know, it's just the amount of people that work on these things. It's unbelievable. Like I said, I don't even know how many it is. It's a lot of people. It's the Meatballs was super fun.
What about Pongo? So this one you had told me about, and I had missed this one, and I watched it, and he's got a really funny design. He's very memorable, and the thing that made me laugh is when someone said like he's kind of wet. So like, yeah, what's your memory of Pongo?
that Pongo, I would say, is like the Meatballs of this season so far, in terms of like, it was such a fun time to work on it. We really loved it. Shout out to Lee McGee, who's the art director for the film unit. I think that's his official title. I forget, but anyway, he was leading up Pongo's design. He's one of the most talented people I've ever worked with. I really, really enjoy working with him. But yeah, they all, you know, him and the writers and everybody collaborated to this like design of this featureless pet. And I think a big part of it was just like the design, like everyone was in love with this little creature, and we just had a really fun time working on that sketch. It was I did a lot of those shots were 3D stuff, and I don't do that much 3D stuff. I'm more like compositing in 2D. And so, but I got to composite some of the 3D animation into the live action shots for that sketch, and like add like some of them were like there was a practical Pongo puppet like on set, and we have it. It's like in our office now. It's like we all kind of can go pet Pongo whenever we want. And like we added like blinks and stuff to Pongo's face. That was a really fun one also.
So this is another one you called to my attention. I had not seen, or maybe I did, Woody Harrelson's Cologuard. This is the one with the boxes, and I was laughing out loud with this one for sure. So what do you recall from the colon cancer screening product goes off the rails?
That one was really that was a really fun one for me personally, because that was probably the biggest single like contribution I was able to make to a sketch. Just to give you an idea of like how many people are involved in this. I think we have like 10 or 12, maybe more VFX artists who are on our film unit, like between usually it's 3 different sketches, sometimes 2 different sketches on a given week. But that week is sort of one of these things we talked about where sometimes we get to work in advance. I forget who it was specifically, but I think it was Dave Eber, who's one of our VFX leads. He came and is like, hey, we got this thing. It might have been him or Milton. Milton Ladd is another of our leads. They were like, hey, we got this thing that's right up your alley. We got to animate these characters' faces. Can you go ahead and build? We have the design because it already exists. There was a parody of a real mascot of a box that you take a poop in. And it's like, we've got this design. Can you build out a face rig in After Effects for it that we can apply to all these 3D models and puppets and things like that? So I actually was able to work on that. I was out of town. I wasn't even going to be on the show that week. And they're like, this is so up your alley. Like, is there any way you can help? And I was down in Georgia at my mom's house. And so I ended up doing all of that remotely. And I built this rig. I used a lot of the same, I used a lot of the same stuff that I would use for like an Archer face. To give it some sort of this stuff and blinks and, smiles and all this stuff. And there's a YouTube channel, Backwoods Animation, I believe it's called, that they had a tutorial about how to do like a mouth rig. And I was like, that's it was like the perfect kind of example of what these Cologuard mouths look like. And so I used that and built that all in advance. And so then my whole day Saturday was animating every single line and face of every single one of those Cologuard boxes in the sketch. And so that was the most that I was ever able to contribute personally to a single sketch. So that was really special to me for them to trust me to do that. I think Mike Diva directed that. He's another person who's just like, everyone there is so talented. I love working with Mike. Mike has a lot of VFX background as well. So working with him on anything is always really, really fun because he thinks like a VFX artist and he really gets it. And so I love working with him. And he was the director on that one.
Yeah, because is that a newer thing on SNL? Because I looked at his stuff when you mentioned him, and so are they leaning towards with these shorts or digital shorts, like are pre-taped? Is this kind of going in a direction of more kind of VFX, almost like humor? It's because like even the copy is similar, where it's like I noticed colon cancer screening product goes off the rails, and then it's like wing commercial goes off the rails. So it's like the off the rails part usually requires you guys to like take some kind of character and evolve it, and that seems to be something that is really I don't know, it just seems to leave a lasting impression with that. So is that kind of like, do you see that being more of a standard week to week?
That's an interesting question. I can't really speak to the mentality or the thinking of like the writers and the producers, but what I do think I can comfortably say is that we have risen to a lot of these challenges that the writers have sort of thrown down for us, where, you know, the only thing limiting them is their imagination, and they're like, this is what we want to do, and we're like, all right, let's figure out how to do it. And I being a part of this team is just it's very, very rewarding. And I feel like as the writers push the envelope in terms of what they can ask us to do in a given amount of time, as we've been able to succeed, and, you know, credit to everyone on the team. Matt Yonks is one of our producers. He, like, you know, he put together a lot of this VFX team, and, you know, every time we're able to succeed, so to speak, you know, it's up to the viewer as to how much we succeed. But, like, you know, when we actually finish a sketch on time, that's a huge amount of VFX. Well, then the next time a writer has an idea like that, they're like, hey, maybe they actually could do this in the time that we have. And I think that it's a game of push and pull and push and pull between the writers and the cast and the people who put in these performances and come up with all of this stuff, and us, the people in post, in the editing and VFX and all this stuff, and what we can get out given the amount of time. And I think we are really, I mean, I've only been there, like, you know, less than 3 full seasons, but I feel like things have gotten pushed in just the time that I've been there in what we're doing.
I mean, yeah, the Timothy Chalamet sketches are when I really started to notice, like, it was making a lasting impression on my brain of, like, whoa, they're going, like, hard on this. The last one that I think I wanted to touch on real quick was just Wing Pit with Pedro Pascal. So this was, like I said, this is the Wing commercial that goes off the rails. And the best part for me is like when there's, like, a chicken god at the end.
Oh yeah, I did the chicken. I got to animate the chicken god. Yeah, I did the lip flap for Kyrax, the chicken god of death. And I did the composite. I did a few. There were some things that got cut from that, I think, that I did. But I did there's a shot where a bunch of wings basically are coming down the stairs toward and filling up the space around Keenan and Pedro. And those wings, a lot of them were practical. Like, a lot of the wings you watch commercial, they're like, that's all, like, I don't know if they were, like, I wasn't there. I don't know if they were, like, actual wings or fake wings. I don't know exactly what they did. But there was a lot of practical wings on the set. And then there were some, like, 3D digital wings that were created by some of the 3D team. And the most interesting thing actually about Wing Pit, from my point of view, is the other sketch that was on the show that week was Mario Kart in the style of Last of Us. And that was the stuff on that was so advanced. It was really tons of really advanced compositing and 3D stuff that I was just like, I'll be over here at Wing Pit if you guys need me, because I was so intimidated by Mario Kart. I think I only ended up doing, like, 2 or 3 shots on Mario Kart and all I did was green screen keying. I was just like, I'll be, because every time there's a sketch where it's like, well, every time there's a Pongo or a Meatballs or something like that, there's also other sketches that need people to do the VFX and stuff. And so sometimes, luck of the draw, you don't necessarily get to work on the most fun one that given week. But I will say that Mario Kart was a ton of work, and it was nominated for an Emmy, I believe. It was incredible work. But, you know, somebody had to lip flap Kyrax, the chicken god of death, and I was lucky enough that I got to do that. So yeah, and then we, I think, I hope I'm not misstating this, but I believe one of the writers or one of the main writers in that was Colin Jost. And after it was done, I did, like, some fan art of Kyrax that I posted in the Slack, and they ended up printing T-shirts. It was like a black metal. Amazing. It was like a black metal style T-shirt of Kyrax, the chicken god of death.
Well, yeah, let's use that to transition into the work on Archer, and it kind of starts with Extacles. And so, yeah, I guess where I want to start is, well, actually, why don't you just tell us the how Extacles was the project that kind of held you guys over creatively until Adam came to you with the idea.
So yeah, that's going back a long ways to whenever I was at 7030 Productions, who did Sealab 2021, and we did a show called Frisky Dingo, and both of those were for Adult Swim. And whenever we finished with Frisky Dingo, and then it was determined that we weren't going to do another season of Frisky Dingo, and Adam left Atlanta. He went to, I think he's talked about this in interviews and stuff, but basically he went to Spain, and he did like, there's like a pilgrimage walk or whatever that tourists and lots of people do. That's like a really legendary, like amazing views and cool stuff that you see in Spain. He went and did that. I don't know the name of it.
I wrote it down. It's the Camino de Santiago.
Yeah, I think that's it. And so while he was gone, we still had an animation studio. We still had people working. And was like, well, what are we going to do next? And we decided to do a spinoff of Frisky Dingo. And so it was going to be about his like super soldiers. And so we started making that. And then we got I think we were in the middle of the third episode when Adult Swim was like, we're going to put the first 2 episodes on TV this weekend. And we're like, what do you mean? It's like, we're going to put them on this weekend. And then it was like, and you don't need to finish the rest of them. It's like, I don't remember exactly. I just remember it was like basically got canceled before it even got out the gate, honestly. And I think they did air those 2 episodes. The third episode, I don't even remember anything about it, to be completely honest. This is 2008 or something. And then so at that point, the 7030 basically went out of business. Like we didn't have any shows. And so my severance was I got to take my computer home, which was amazing because it was a relatively new, nice computer that we had just gotten to do the Xtacles.
What kind of computer was it?
Like a Mac Pro, it might have been a G5 is still at that point. They might have called them G5, but I think it was like, it's the big silver cheese grater Mac Pro, the original one.
Yeah. Okay. Uh-huh.
And so we went home. This was like December. And then by January, Adam was back from Spain and he was like, I've got this idea for a show. It's called Archer. Actually, it was called Duchess at that time. And it's a secret agent show like James Bond, and we're going to make a pilot. And so we all came back. We all brought our computers back, and we made the pilot for Archer. And that, we made the pilot, and then there was like a big wait. I forget how long it was, how many months, but it was several months between when we finished the pilot and when we got word, yes, FX is gonna make this TV show. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. It was a lot of hard work. But this like sort of the salad days is like we worked out of this house in East Atlanta.
No way.
Doing those shows, and it was just like it was only like 7 or 8 of us at maximum. Doing all this stuff, and it was just so much fun. We just really had a great time. We would stop and it got to a point we would stop and play video games every day, like play Call of Duty, and it got to a point where like I was like, we can't stop and play video games today. I actually have to finish this stuff. Like I gotta get the work done. But yeah, I look back on all that time so fondly because it was such a wonderful time working with Adam and Matt Thompson, our the other owner of the company at that time.
Yeah, so because this is something that caught my eye, because I had mentioned this to you, but my introduction to animation was through my uncles with like Speed Racer and Johnny Quest and anything along those lines that they were into in the 70s and 80s and all that. So when I saw Archer, I was at first like, okay, am I going to be able to enjoy something satirical, maybe something dark? And then once I started watching it, I was like, oh, this is even kind of giving me some of that like action adventure that I kind of unironically just enjoy. So like, how much of that was the emphasis on making the action compelling and interesting, and then also kind of keeping it like a part of the comedy and a part of the satire? Like, how did you guys approach that?
I would give almost all the credit for that type of stuff to Neil Luhrmann, who was the art director on the show, and really he was sort of the lead board artist de facto when we first started out, and we eventually expanded and had a full like real storyboard department and stuff. But like I give so much of the credit for that to Adam and Neil. They are people who just are such huge fans of movies, and they have seen so many things and can remember like a specific shot they saw in some. Adam especially can remember, like he can remember like a shot or a thing that was in some movie from 1963 that he saw, and like he wants us to reference that specific thing. And Neil Holman, just incredible talent, still there at Floyd County. He's director on Hit Monkey right now for Hulu, and I give him a lot of the credit for that. And then for my role as the animation director on Archer, I was sort of more a lot of times the animation director will be doing the boards and stuff too. On Archer, I was not. That was more Adam and Neil, and were overseeing that. And my job was like to make sure we could actually accomplish what they wanted to do in After Effects, which is sort of super unusual piece of software to be doing a show like this in. And it was one of the, it became a real hybrid show. There's a lot of 3D elements in it with the vehicles and stuff eventually. Yeah. But when it started out, it was, After Effects, and my job was just to make sure that we could actually execute the action that they wanted visually to animate it, and build rigs and build character designs and build puppets, because it's a puppet style show that could do all this stuff and simulate these like amazing action shows. Eventually, I think after I left, they started getting to a little bit of Toon Boom harmony for some of the action stuff. I heard I was not around for that, but like some of the more complex stuff that maybe After Effects was not quite the right fit for, they would animate more traditionally. And
what led you as a team to the path of After Effects, and what did you guys?
It was the only thing we knew. It was how we'd made every other show. It was like how they started out making Sealab. It was how we made Frisky Dingo. It was like, unless they wanted to replace the entire staff, they had to make it at After Effects. so that's why it was at After Effects.
And then, what was the software that you guys would use for those like 3D moments that you're referencing?
That's after I left. I'm not really sure what they were using, if it was Maya or C4D. I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. That was the 3D stuff sort of came into the pipeline after I was more on I went freelance. I was still animating for the first 5 seasons, but I wasn't as involved in the creative after I moved to New York.
And then you had mentioned, as I was reading on your page, that you were involved in the facial animation. So could you kind of touch on what that means? And you even mentioned it with the SNL work, how this came in handy. But like,
oh yeah, they were related,
like, because the voice cast is amazing. How did they get that voice cast to be like just right out the gate, have so much chemistry? And then like how much work is it to translate the different personalities of the characters? Because it's one of the few animated shows where like you pretty much can picture, but then you also create these like parallel universes where it's like, I know what this actor looks like, I know who this actor is, but I also have this like parallel universe where they are this character. And like, what do you think is making that mesh together so well?
I honestly think that's just the magic of the show and the cast. I mean, I wasn't like directly involved in the casting process, but we were like brainstorming around the room at that time, like, who should we get? And originally, when we first did the pilot for Archer, Adam Reed was the voice of Archer, and he had been the voice of Xander Cruz on Frisky Dingo. And we watched it, and it just like wasn't working. It was because it was Xander Cruz trying to be someone who wasn't Xander Cruz, and we had just come off of Frisky Dingo, and it just like wasn't working. It's like, well, if we could get anybody in the world, who would we get? And we started like putting together like a list. This has been a long time ago, so I don't remember who, but like we said John Benjamin. So, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we could get John Benjamin? And it was like, you could definitely get John Benjamin. And it's like, oh, we did, and we got him. And, I credit Adam and Matt for being, and I'm sure FX probably had some of the execs there probably chimed in on that. I don't really know. But yeah, the cast just, a lot of times people ask me, well, do you get all of them in the room? They're all recording at the same time. It's like, no, that's just how good these actors are, and how good our animatic editors on Archer were, is how in the radio plays, like you would think they were all in the same room recording these lines. The chemistry was always wonderful from the get-go, honestly. And I think some of the people, like if you're talking about like Amber Nash or Lucky Yates, who are Pam and Dr. Krieger, they became more and more a bigger part of the show. They were people that we knew in Atlanta that were improv actors and comedians in Atlanta, and they just brought their own level of chemistry to it too, and they became bigger and bigger parts of the show. But obviously having Jessica Walter, who was incredible, what a amazing get that was. I remember how excited we were when we found out that she had said yes. Oh my God. That was amazing. But yeah, like, that's just, I credit to those actors. I credit to the editors. In terms of the facial animation and stuff, like that's all driven by them. We're just trying to capture what they've put into the performance and do our best to honor and do justice to their amazing performances.
Yeah. So what kind of skills do you need to have if you were to try to teach a young animator on a show like Archer? Like, what's the context they need to have to translate a really good voice performance into an animation that,
Well, a really talented animator needs to be a really talented actor, or at least know how to translate that. Acting is a huge part of animation, and so many, a lot of us we self-tape, ourselves delivering. I'm holding up my phone. Ourselves delivering the lines. We do reference videos. We'll set up a tripod and like act out a thing in front of a camera because we want it like as reference for how we want to animate it. And so if you're gonna be a really great animator, you need to understand acting. You need to be a really great. I don't want to go so far as say you need to be a really great actor yourself, but in a way you kind of do. And especially if you're going to do a show there where comedy is a big part of it, like, timing is key.
Yeah. Okay. That's really good. I love that, because that is the thing that stood out to me is it just felt so modern, but also so classic at the same time. And that like that modern feel, I'm assuming, came from you as a team having worked on so many projects together that by the time you got that, there was a little bit of this like new thing. Because when I look through your reels, like I could almost spot like that style kind of as a through line, but also evolving. Like even in something that I wanted to mention, there was an Osiris ad that you did where it's kind of like, did you ever see the character Ratfink? I'm
very familiar. Yes, it's one of my touchstone art illustration things that I love is absolutely.
So is that like, would you say that through line from an art style is something that like what is that? Is it like the thick black lines? Is it the aggressive kind of like texturing against like there's like a clean and a textured, like what is that style that I've seen in a couple, it's not in every project, but a couple of projects where I think it plays really nicely with the like 80s style of animation too. Like you could kind of pull those different inspirations. So like just talk a little bit about like the illustration side of your influences. Yeah. And do you ever get to because you mentioned that you drew the Chicken of Death. So like how much of your job is doing the art? When does that come in?
So I didn't. So just to, on the Chirax, that was actually a physical statue of him that they made, and I applied in After Effects and made the beak talk and stuff. And so I didn't draw it, but yeah, the same in terms of like what you were talking about my illustration style and stuff. Like you really, you're very perceptive because like Ed Roth, huge influence on me. Jack Davis is probably the number one influence on me. If you look behind me, this Sesame Street poster that you can kind of see part of.
Yeah.
Jack Davis did that. But what you can't see is on the wall facing me, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pieces, 8 pieces of Jack Davis art on my wall that like I'm always looking at, and another one back there. So 9. I'm sort of obsessed with Jack Davis because I'm from Georgia, and he would draw all these Georgia Bulldog mascots. And when I was a little kid, I would go to the University of Georgia football games, and there would be a a badass illustration of a bulldog mascot on the Coke cups that you would get at the concession stand. And I used to just stare at those instead of the football game. I loved them. And so he's a huge, tremendous influence on me. One of the greatest illustrators in the history of America and the world, in my opinion. He's one of the original Gang of Idiots at Mad Magazine. Like he did EC Comics. Like he is a legend. He passed away several years ago, but I was fortunate enough I got to meet him a handful of times and even work with him on an animation project for a documentary about Uga, the bulldog mascot. So Jack Davis is like that illustration. Like I originally, before I was into animation too, but like I love comic strips, Calvin and Hobbes, obviously. There's an old comic called Pogo by Walt Kelly, which takes place in the Okefenokee Swamp, which is where I grew up, basically. And so I've always been a huge fan of Pogo. And if you've ever read like Bone by Jeff Smith, he's very heavily influenced by Walt Kelly. I love Bone. Jeff Smith's really big influence on me, comics in general. So like anytime that there's sort of a fight between illustration and animation, in that with animation, unless you want it to take forever, you do have to like kind of simplify and sort of streamline design so that these characters are easy to move and do frame by frame. And with illustration, it's just a single image, and you can put as much detail and texture and love and warmth or whatever into it as you possibly can. It's just one image. And so I do really love, I do have a true fandom for illustration. And it is a big influence on my animation as well.
Yeah, no, it's seeing the influences that you also mentioned. I could kind of see the more of that through line. It's like kind of gritty, but like maybe it's that simplified design aesthetic where there's a really strong silhouette, to the characters. And so that's really cool to see those influences. Yeah. So then, besides that, I think those are the big things I wanted to talk about. We could mention that you've done work on Stephen Colbert, and again, that kind of has more of that style that I love to see, and that humor that you're drawn to. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on before we bounce?
No, I think that you pretty much covered. I will say, in terms of the Colbert stuff, shout out to Tim Lukey, who's one of the producers and the director of animation over there at Late Night Cartoons is the sort of branch under Stephen Colbert. And we do these Christmas and well, actually we did it Easter, but Christmas specials, animated Christmas specials that air on the Late Show. And I worked with Tim on another show called Our Cartoon President, but that's how I got in with them. And every time we get to do these Christmas specials, man, it is some of the most fun stuff I get to work on. And the people I get to work with on those are also I've just been very, very, very blessed to work with so many incredibly talented people in my career. It's truly, animation, this is corny, but I say it a lot, is animation it takes a village, to borrow a phrase from Hillary Clinton. It's really a collaborative effort, and I've been very fortunate to have some incredible collaborators over the years. And working with Tim Lukey has been a real amazing thing for me personally, and all the people that I was introduced to through the CBS work has been fantastic.
Awesome. Well, where can people connect with you if they want to follow along or
Sure.
Yeah.
MackWilliams.com, M-A-C-K, Mack like a truck. MackWilliams.com is my website. You can go to pigapple.com, Pigapple. Pig Apple is our company. That website's a little old. It's on my agenda to redo that website soon. And then on social, I've decided I'm sort of off social media at the moment. Like I needed a break from Twitter. I'm on Instagram. You can find me, awesome, AEWSOME. Awesome misspelled, AEWSOME is my Instagram, but I don't, that's mostly like pictures of barbecue, if I'm being honest. I don't really put a lot of my work up there. So yeah, feel free. I would love for people to reach out, and I love talking about this stuff with people, as you might have I'm a little gabby, so you might have noticed.
What about before we go, barbecue spot in New York City if people wanted to find?
Oh, all right. So I think unquestionably the best barbecue in New York City is at Hometown Barbecue in Red Hook. Now, that is not to say there isn't a lot of other really great barbecue in New York City. There is. I'm from the South. I'm from Georgia. I have a lot of opinions and thoughts on barbecue. But there is some good barbecue here in New York, and I would say Hometown is a great place. If you want to go a little further afield, Hoodoo Brown in Ridgefield, Connecticut is also good. And Kimchi Smoke in New Jersey. It's sort of like he doesn't like to be called like fusion, but it's like it's not Korean barbecue. It's barbecue with Korean influence. It's he does some of the most outstanding Texas briskets. Rob over there at Kimchi Smoke. I'm just a huge fan of him and his work. But yeah, Hometown would be, if you're in the city, Hometown is it for me.
Nice. I would. I don't know if you've been out to LA recently, and I haven't had these spots recently, but the two places that I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on is Horse Thief Barbecue in downtown LA and Helen Ray's, not barbecue, but Nashville hot chicken.
I haven't been to either. I've heard of the Horse Thief. I've heard of Horse Thief.
Okay.
What was the one in LA I went to? Oh man, there was. Why am I?
Good barbecue is kind of hard to find out here.
I mean, I don't know why I'm blanking up. Moose. It was Moo. Yeah.
Okay. How do you spell that?
Moo. Moo's Craft Barbecue. MOO''S. Moo's Craft Barbecue.
Okay.
Some of the it was outstanding barbecue, and I would actually say the spare ribs I had at Moo's were in the top 3 or 4 spare ribs I've ever had. Period. Just was a huge fan of Moo's. So if you're in LA, Moo's is my recommendation.
Okay, Lincoln Heights. That's basically where I lived for a couple of years. So I got to go. That's right great. In my neck of the woods. All right, sweet. Well, thank you for the recommendation.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks again for doing this. This is super fun. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Next time I'll talk about nothing but barbecue.
Yes. Well, we love food here too, so that would be perfect. And then. Yeah, I want to keep tabs on the sketches, so I'll keep an eye out on YouTube for that, I guess, and look for.
There's some good stuff coming this week. We're
Ryan Gosling, right?
Ryan Gosling, yeah, going.
That's gonna be
first thing tomorrow. Should be a fun day.
Great. Well, then we'll let you enjoy the rest of your Friday evening because tomorrow will be
a long day.
a long day.
Yeah.
All right, man. Cool.
Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate you having me. This has been really fun. Thanks so much, Spencer.
All right. See you guys later.
Bye-bye.